Today I wanted to talk about abuse and what we thought abuse was, and why we didn't see abuse in emotional and psychological abuse. I know for myself, the vision was about someone hitting, verbal attacks, anger, throwing things, which is part of abuse and control and creating fear. But I also had a level of what I allowed and what I didn't allow that my abusers knew were boundaries that weren't healthy. They were very bizarre boundaries. Like, if you hit me, then you crossed the line. But then I forgave because you actually didn't hit, you pushed. Or you threw or got angry about something, but depended on the situation whether I accepted it or not. So those boundaries had such wiggle room of what was allowed and what wasn't, what was abusive and what was not. Emotional and psychological abuse was totally out of my consciousness in labeling it that. I was aware that it was dysfunctional and how it made me feel inside and frustrated me. And I went into this convincing mode of trying to get the abuser to understand why I felt the way I did and try to fix it. But at the end of the day, what I allowed into my world and accepted as part of life, I thought was healthy, because someone did not hit me. Someone did not outwardly abuse me. I thought that was abuse. And the only form of abuse. My last abuser got me to see that abuse is so much more broad a topic, and awareness of how the hitting and the throwing and the anger was just the final step. That the psychological part and the emotional part were all the steps and stages that were done more often. Even if someone was hit, all those other layers were the first steps. The grand finale of abuse, if you were to have a grand finale, like the last part of abuse, is the hitting. So if they didn't go that far, because my radar and my boundaries said, no, I will not allow. If they know that, they don't go there. Or maybe they never go there. So they recognize, well, I'm not someone who does that. So they feel I'm safe because I can get away with all the other behaviors, because she's unaware that it is actually considered abuse. That's my huge awareness of what abuse is, that I believe I'm not the only one who feels that way or felt that way or understood it. Because when we're taught about what abuse is, it's about seeing a mark. It is about leaving a physical scar, an injury that someone can look at. It's not that that's not abuse, it is abuse, but it's not the only form of abuse. And it's much more horrendous, the fear and the angst and the control without hitting that goes on before someone hits. That's the everyday abuse that goes under the radar. That here at Beyond Abuse, I want to open up the topic. I want to open up the awareness, because unless and until we have the knowledge, the abuse continues, right? That's how the abuser is allowed to hit eventually, because we didn't see the warning signs of the emotional, psychological abuse that happened before the hitting began. So obviously, when we meet someone, an abuser, if they are someone that hits and physically abuses, is not going to physically abuse you the moment they meet you. And so the outside world thinks, well, how did you allow that? Well, it started with the emotional and the psychological abuse first. It was that conditioning that occurred that allowed the actual physical abuse to happen, the financial abuse to happen. That person pretends to be exactly the opposite of who they are really on the inside. And there's a shame that goes along with that, that we have adopted as our own, that we were, how could you be that stupid, that other people wouldn't fall for it. And people who believe that they would never fall for it, guess what? They are more vulnerable to falling for it because they really don't know what they don't know. So in their world, they can't imagine it happening. Well, I don't think any of us grew up believing that this would be our life, that we would be psychologically, emotionally, or physically, financially abused on so many levels. That was not our goal in life. That's not what we were expecting to have happen. That's not what we saw in the relationship with the person that we were with. And so that's why I feel it's so important that we understand what abuse is, how it works, and how to see it to disarm abusers. Because if they don't have the tools to abuse, they can't abuse. These tools are the secret code that, just like any disease has, that there's a pattern. They continue, like a disease, to continue to do the same things over and over again. I'm sure that you have witnessed someone who has been through particular diseases, and if you've had the flu and somebody else has the flu, isn't it interesting that you all had the same symptoms? Well, what did you have? What did you... Well, that's what happens when we talk to someone else who's been abused. Some of the same language is spoken. The same techniques are used. So that's why it's important to research and understand what the abuser was about. But also we need to balance that and figure out what was it about us that's a pattern similar to other people who have been abused as well. We learn and we grow and we get to understand and get to know ourselves better. That relationship of understanding ourselves is the greatest relationship that we will ever have. It's the only person that we will be with our entire life. If we don't understand ourselves, others tend to understand us better. And that is a disadvantage. We need to have a clear understanding of who we are. Not what we've been told, but who we are at our core, to unleash that, to get to know ourselves like we're in a relationship with ourselves, because we are. We just were not taught that there was value in that there was value in having time alone, that there was value in getting to know our own interests, our own desires, and getting to know how to connect and give ourselves what we were looking for on the outside in relationships that could never give it to us. What we didn't know before about abuse and the steps and the stages that create abuse is a wonderful place to be at right now. I know we want to be on the other side of it. We will in time. But this is a great opportunity to strengthen and grow and exercise our ability to know ourselves. That's what I did. I've seen others do it, my clients do it, and I'm looking forward to putting the information out there for everyone who is in the process of doing it as well. I know that you've got this. I know you can do it. If I could do it, you can do it too. And that's what these videos are all about. I thank you for joining. If you have any suggestions of topics, things that are important to you, list them below. I will be looking through to get ideas for future videos. But we're starting with the basics and building on that. And I thank you again for joining Beyond Abuse. Sending out much peace, love, and joy to all of you. You've got this.